Hello, I'm Kristy Allen, and you're listening to the Tsunami of Truth here on jmcbroadcasting.com. St. Augustine said, "The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself." We're playing a massive game of dot to dot this morning on February 26, 2028, and the picture forming isn't just surprising, it's revolutionary. We were told the Epstein files were the end of the story, but the real shocker is not just who was in those files, but who was not even mentioned once. Remember the king of pop? Michael Jackson told us decades ago, "They don't really care about us." And while the media spent years smearing him, the truth is bubbling up. Michael wasn't a predator. He was a protector. As it turns out, Michael Jackson was building a sanctuary at Neverland to keep children away from the very trafficking networks that are now being dismantled. And there are whispers coming out of the Valhalla protection program that MJ and several other deceased heroes who refused the dark agenda and are allegedly more than ready to testify in the upcoming trials. And if true, well, this show isn't over. And the encore is going to be more than just legendary. It's always been about the children, always. And while the talking heads on the mainstream channels argued about policy and budgets and red versus blue, a real visceral war has been raging in the shadows. For years, millions of children disappeared into the abyss of the Mexican cartel wars. And we're not talking about a multi-million-dollar industry that profits from the most vulnerable souls on the planet. We're talking about what was going on right here in America. That the wind has shifted and you can feel it in the air, despite the frantic denials from the nothing to see here crowd and the legacy media outlets that are still trying to sell us a version of reality that expired in 2020. U.S. intel is currently guiding precision strikes. We aren't just talking about building a wall, we're talking about dismantling a network. With our borders finally sealed, as confirmed in the State of the Union address the other night, the predatory flow has been cut off at the source. But here's the kicker. As the external supply for children dries up, the beast has turned inward. And when you can't get what you want from across the border, you start looking in your own backyard. We're seeing a desperate surge in domestic child snatching. And the most sickening part, and parents, I want you to listen to this, our own child protective agencies, the very institutions we were told were designed to protect the innocent, have been caught acting as the middleman. This isn't just a failure of policy, it's a crimes against humanity charge waiting to happen. I've been tracking a specific horror story in Ohio that perfectly illustrates this rot, and I invite you to notice that this isn't just one case, it's the blueprint for how they operate. Caitlin Hunter and her mother, Janine, have been in the crosshairs of a corrupt system in Guernsey County, Ohio. We're talking about a foster system that doesn't just fail children, it allegedly functions more like a pipeline for torture and vanishing teens. So let's look at the timeline. In November of 2025, Ohio CPS took 11-year-old Caitlin. She was a child. She spent years in a living hell before finally escaping at 16. And just days ago, on February 23rd, a police raid was used to silence Janine. Why? Because she wouldn't stop fighting. Even worse, Caitlin's grandmother, Betty, was medically murdered in January of 2026 after being denied basic care in a filthy facility. The coroner called it natural causes, but a hole in her head said otherwise. Now let's talk about you. I hear people say all the time, "Oh, that's so sad. Someone should do something." Well, guess what? You are someone. And if you think you can just listen to this podcast and feel a little pang of sympathy, then going back to scrolling for dinner recipes while Caitlin is trapped in a system that views her as a line item, then you might be part of the problem. This is a psychological job they've been doing on all of us, making us think that we're powerless. But we aren't. If we've got fingers to type and a voice to speak, and you choose to do nothing, don't Don't claim you care about the children. These officials count on your apathy. They bank on the fact that you'll be too busy or too polite to make a phone call. But if we flood the zone and call that Franklin County coroner and call the Ohio Attorney General, maybe things will change. And if you don't, you're just living, giving lip service to a tragedy while kids are being pimped out under the cover of the law. So speaking of invisible threats, let's talk about that glowing rectangle in your hand. Anthony Cabral recently blew the whistle on U.S. patent 6,506,148, and it's titled Nervous System Manipulation by Electromagnetic Fields from Monitors. Yeah, the same monitors that are on your screens, on your computer screens, and what your kids are watching. So this isn't science fiction, it's physics. And Anthony pointed out the fact that our human brain is an electrical organ. And when you flood a developing nervous system with pulsed frequencies and artificial blue light for 12 hours a day, you aren't just watching a show, you're altering biology. Look, we have to stop acting surprised by the rise in ADHD, anxiety, and sleep disorders when we're literally soaking our children in a digital soup. We've got kids on tablets for hours exposed to blue light from sunrise to midnight and living in homes and schools saturated with Wi-Fi and pulsed frequencies. We forget that the human brain is an electrical organ, and our neurons communicate through voltage gradients, and our entire internal clock from melatonin to dopamine is regulated by light. We're made of light, and you simply cannot flood a developing nervous system with these artificial frequencies and expect zero biological fallout. It's just basic physics. Now, the reality is that our modern environment has become electrically and optically mismatched to our actual human biology. And I have the feeling that this is not by accident. But the goal here isn't to panic, it's to cultivate awareness and reclaim our terrain. We can fix the mismatch by getting back to the basics, prioritizing morning sunlight, ensuring total darkness at night, and drastically reducing screen time in favor of being outdoors. By incorporating things like grounding and blue light blocking and intentional nervous system recovery. We allow the body to find its rhythm again. It's about shifting the environment so that our biology can finally function the way it was designed to. So yeah, we wonder why ADHD and aggression and sleep disorders are skyrocketing. Well, it was because the modern environment was optically mismatched to human life. So we got to ground, get more morning sunlight, and turn the damn things off so our bodies have a fighting chance to heal from this once in a while. Your terrain is shifting, so make sure you're the one holding the remote. Now let's get into the heavy stuff. Regarding the Jenner family, specifically Kylie, new reports are suggesting a dark role within procurement networks, as in procuring for the sex trade. Now, this isn't just about lip kits. It's about a black market machine. From 2023 to 2025, multiple models from Kylie Cosmetics campaigns reportedly vanished after being funneled into exclusive enhancement retreats. Names like Valentina S., Elia M., and Elena K. are linked to these disappearances with hush money paid to families, while the girls were jetted off to places like Baja, never to return. Cue the Storm on Telegram said, Kylie Jenner serves as a key asset in the Epstein-linked child exploitation empire. Groomed from tabloid star to active recruiter and financier in a black market machine spanning elite estates to hidden clinics. Her entry fused with Kardashian ties to Epstein's orbit around 2020 to 2022. Kris Jenner's elite web funneled her into Palm Beach proximity during Maxwell's grooming sessions and Florida business trips. By 23, she entered Schiabara's Beverly Hills Anti-Aging Institute for Masculine Fusions, inheriting family connections to become a fresh face procurer under mentorship cover. Jenner recruits and funds. As billionaire influencer, she lures the ambitious, keeping the harvest endless, flaunting her ageless look as proof while mocking the sleeping public, unquote. Kris Jenner is allegedly the architect here, using empowerment grants as laundering fronts. They used blood-themed motifs to signal the harvest to insiders, but the white hats are closing in, and the youth they flaunt had a price tag, and that price is finally being tallied. Now we need to have a come to Jesus moment. We've been sold a bill of goods for generations, and it's time to talk about the Zion button. You see, there's the Israel of the Bible, and then there's the secular state of Israel established in 1948 by political decree. If you think those two are the same, I've got beachfront property on the moon to sell you. And ever since the Balfour Declaration in 1917, the world's been played. The Zionists didn't just want a piece of land. They wanted a greater Israel that stretched from sea to shining sea right here in America. So they don't just lobby our politicians, they own them. Why do you think every time an American bridge collapses, we somehow find another few billion to send overseas as if D.C. is a satellite office for Tel Aviv? Tucker Carlson, what a brave man, recently interviewed Mike Huckabee. Tucker asked why Americans are being interrogated in Israel. Huckabee's response, don't worry about it. He was grilled on why sex offenders who flee from the U.S. to Israel aren't being extradited. Silence. He was asked if the current secular government is the Israel of the Bible, and even though Huckabee tried to wrap the political regime in a prayer shawl, the math doesn't add up. The Israel of the Bible is one thing, and the other is a 20th century political construct that funds free abortions while our own veterans sleep on the streets. For decades, the Zionist ploy has used American pulpits to convince you that to question a political lobby is to curse God himself. And while it's a brilliant marketing strategy, the tsunami is washing away the propaganda, and people are getting that it's not anti-Semitism to demand that Americans, politicians, put America first. George Santayana said, chaos is a name for any order that produces confusion in our minds. We're seeing chaos right now, but it's the productive kind. Former World Bank President David Malpass recently admitted that the Federal Reserve isn't a bank, it's a giant, unregulated hedge fund for the financial elite. They borrow at high rates just to buy government bonds and fake a healthy economy. Who owns it? Well, the member banks hold the stock and collect a guaranteed 6% dividend. It's closed-looped where the people printing the money also regulate themselves. But the Nasara-Jassara shift is here, and we're talking about a global debt jubilee. Imagine the looks on the faces of the IRS agents when they realize their jobs have been replaced by a 17% tax on new luxury items only. The quantum financial system is already online, and it's the end of the line for the Rothschilds and their Federal Reserve Bank and the old guard bankers. It's gold-backed, it's unhackable, and the 100-year-old house of cards is falling. Finally, let's talk about a great mystery that's been recently solved. So why did JFK really die? Well, most of us had already figured out that it wasn't just about a lone gunman. But the new documents just released tell us it was about something I'd never heard of. Project Genesis. 3 weeks before Dallas, Kennedy signed Executive Order 11063. And the public saw an EO about housing. And the classified annex saw that Kennedy had just authorized the release of Tesla's frequency healing secrets to the world back in 1963. So you see, Kennedy knew the elite had weaponized energy. Scientists at the Dulce and Fort Detrick bases found that 528 hertz repairs DNA in 72 hours. 7.83 hertz stops cancer cells, and 963 hertz triples stem cell production. Dr. Royal Rife proved this in 1934, and they burned his lab. Kennedy wanted to give this to the people. The CIA, led by Allen Dulles, and the Pharmaceutical Board wanted to keep you in managed illness instead. Why? Because a cured patient is a lost customer. After Dallas, LBJ transferred the research to a CIA pharmaceutical board, including Pfizer and Merck representatives. They didn't destroy it. They repurposed it for MK Ultra to break minds instead of healing bodies. For 60 years, Big Pharma spent trillions keeping you sick, making frequency healing a felony. But on January 31st, 2026, the vault was blown open. Med beds are no longer a secret. Trump delivered what Kennedy started and Tesla dreamed. Your body was designed to heal. They just spent 80 years making sure you forgot how. For our last story, let's talk about the word Armageddon. The word itself means Mount of Megiddo. Now, Megiddo isn't some mystical floating island. It's a real strategic hilltop in northern Israel that was like the Grand Central Station of ancient warfare. And if you wanted to control the trade routes, you'd have to hold down Mount Megiddo with your army. And historically, so many blood-soaked battles happened there that the location became synonymous with the ultimate conflict. And by the time we get to the book of Revelation in the New Testament, Armageddon was used to describe the site of the final battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. So many people view Armageddon not as a physical place where tanks and soldiers meet, but as a frequency war. The final collision between a system built on deception, like the deep state matrix, and the incoming golden age of transparency, like when healing frequencies are released, or when our democratic officials won't stand up for America and we see them for what and who they truly are at the State of the Union address. It's that moment the simulation can no longer hold up the weight of its own lies. In that sense, we aren't waiting for a giant explosion in the Middle East. We're living through the Armageddon of the old guard right now. The term Armageddon is rooted in a specific piece of land that has been fought over for millennia, so it's the ultimate Zion button topic. But let's talk about the frequency shift. If the battle is for the mind and the nervous system, like we discussed with the patents and the blue light from our computer screens being a real problem for our health, then Armageddon is simply the final cleanup of the old low vibrational interference. If so, it's when the tsunami of truth finally hits the light and the people wake up. It's not a comfortable process, so expect some chaos. But the good news is that the golden age is just on the other side of this river of awareness. It is a place where sovereigns can live free and very, very well. And as President Trump said in his State of the Union address, the golden age of America is now upon us. So look, the revolution of 1776 did not end. It just went underground. And now it's coming up for air. So breathe it in, sovereigns. Breathe it in. And thanks for listening to the Tsunami of Truth podcast. I'm Kristy Allen here on johnmichaelchambers.com.
The Federal Reserve is no more a government agency than Federal Express. The Federal Reserve is a corporation founded and run by international bankers.
The Global Financial Reset is not just another podcast or episode of pertinent current discussions concerning economic-related issues. It's also an ongoing educational workshop series.
Join me and my prominent guests every Wednesday live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on JMC Broadcasting's backup Rumble channel on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Sign up for JMC's free weekly war report, including notifications of when the Global Financial Reset show is published. The future is bright, and it belongs to us, not to the global elite.
You can survive and thrive this reset transition, but it takes action on your behalf. The Global Financial Reset Workshop Series gives you the tools to get out of the system with confidence.